Hello, I'm Eric Shawn. Time now for a Sunday House Call.
And I'm Marthel Neville. Welcome. Joining us is Dr. David Samadi, Chairman and Professor of Urology at Lenox Hill Hospital and Chief of Robotic Surgery.
And Dr. Mark Siegel, Professor of Medicine at NYU's Langone Medical Center and author of The Inner Pulse, Unlocking the Secret Code of Sickness and Health.
I love the way Marthel pronounces it. It's so sexy. That's her.
I can't help it, Doc.
I like it. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Nice to see you.
And of course, it's been a very difficult past few days and a horrendous week, as we know the sounds of terror ringing across Paris this past week. You hear those ambulance sirens, you see those scenes throughout the city after those two deadly assaults, and it's raising some health concerns for us about our mental and physical effects on the body of living with the prospect of terrorism, and even what it does to reading and watching these scenes as we sit here at home in America watching all this play out in Paris. Of course, bringing up memories for some of 9/11 and the other previous terrorist attacks, and the threat of even more radical Islamic terrorist attacks that potentially could hit our country, with Senator Dianne Feinstein today saying that there were sleeper cells here in the U.S., she believes, that will potentially attack us. So how do we deal with this, and what does it do to our health? Dr. Samadi, you know, clearly your heart and expressions go out to the victims of this, but also it's anxiety-inducing in many ways for us, even though we're thousands of miles away.
That's so true, and nobody knows this kind of terror better than Israelis, because Israelis have been under this kind of scrutiny for decades. In the last 50, 60 years, we know that there are always these bombshells and they're always under this attack. So what does it do to your health, really? And this study, this is an Israeli study that's coming from Hebrew University in Jerusalem. They looked at about 17,000 people and followed them for over 10 years. And what they realized, that all of this terror, it's not just the sound of this and the sound of the bomb, but it has a health problem and effect on your body. The baseline heart rate, your heart rate should be around 60 normally, but in this particular study they found out that it's always around 80. And when you have this kind of heart rate that's always higher, can lead to heart attack. Without getting into too much into the politics of this, I want to talk about the effect of what stress, anxiety, when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, what happens when you have a very important interview with a president? What happens to your heart? What happens to the palm of your hands? If you're taking an exam or if you have a major surgery coming up, are you nervous? And how does your body react? Let's talk about military kind of a thing in medicine. It's interesting. Think of like Pentagon is located in your brain, which is called hypothalamus. The center of all the important stuff is in hypothalamus in the brain. That's our Pentagon. When you're under stress, when a bomb goes up, Pentagon all of a sudden is alert. Your hypothalamus gland says, guys, we have a war going on. You got to flight or fight. And that's when they send a message to the U.S.-based army, which is your adrenal gland. And what's in your adrenal gland? You have all these lieutenants waiting to be armed. You have adrenal hormone, you have noradrenal, you have cortisol level. Now, short term, your body maybe sends these hormones, but it comes down. Now, if you're under attack all the time, bombshell after bombshell, your cortisol level, Eric, it's going to be high. Your adrenal gland is going to be high. And what does that do? Increase in your inflammation, increase in heart disease, increase in diabetes, increase in your skin, and everything else is affected. So how do you take care of this? Mark, I know, started to do this. Yoga, exercise, relaxations. There are certain things you can avoid. I mean, this is something you cannot avoid. But staying away from negative energy, that's one of the resolution of 2015, remember? But try to stay calm. It has a health problem.
And as you know, Dr. Samadi, that our own Dr. Siegel, I mean, he's an expert in this field. Dr. Siegel has written extensively on the subject, including his book, we're showing it right here, it's False Alarm, The Truth About the Epidemic of Fear. And Dr. Siegel, Dr. Samadi pointed out the whole, what is it, fight or flight feeling that gets into your body and your adrenal glands go crazy. Talk to us, though, about the images. I mean, we want to know what's going on in the world, and we watch these images on television. Talk about separating the panic that could ensue inside of yourself.
And he did an excellent job talking about fight or flight, because I believe, and I wrote about this in my book, that the hormones are released, and you end up having this long-term impact on your heart, on your body, on longevity. But what's happening here is the terrorists know this. They're manipulating us. In other words, the number one weapon of a terrorist is not a plane. It's not a bomb. It's not a gun. It's the fear that ensues. They deliberately attack a news organization, and then everyone's afraid to publish those pictures. They deliberately attack a grocery store because we all eat there. We should be focusing on that boy who helped people get to safety, because that's courage. And that's the antidote to fear, is courage. Instead, we see these images over and over and over, and we personalize them. Then we start to have our own physiological response. That's been studied. A study out of NYU a couple of years ago showed that if you put people in front of a video camera and show them the same violence as if they were actually there, they end up with the same response in their brains, the same response of hormones. So imagine, Arthel, if you show these images over and over and over again, which is why I tell people, you got to take a pause button. I mean, we have great reporters on the ground in Paris right now reporting incredibly on this, but hit the pause button, especially if you're elderly, if you have heart disease. Studies have shown if you're prone to depression or anxiety previously, you get it again from watching this. So David's point about post-traumatic stress, well, if you're in Paris, the closer you are to the scene, the more likely you're going to have post-traumatic stress. Well, but even here in the United States, even here.
How do we turn this around so we can get our inner Winston Churchill?
I say look at the courage of the boy who helped people hide.
Well, also the body will bounce back. So it's interesting because in 2001, when 9/11 happened, I was in France. I was actually doing laparoscopic training over there. And you turn on the TV and all of a sudden you see the buildings are coming down, and that fear that builds up. So what that leads to is possibility of insomnia. You can't sleep at night. You end up into more anxiety and more depression. And I want to tell people that if you're suffering from this, don't just do it on your own. You can seek help. Ask for experts. There are medications that we can give you. Very simple, basic things that we've spoken about. For example, from some of the teas, kava, chamomile, magnesium that can kind of relax you. But those are very basic stuff. There are also anti-anxiety medications that under direction of psychiatrists can help you.
You know, he's telling you about something that I talked about in the book called cycle of worry. You build up a cycle of worry. You start watching this. You watch it at night. You watch it again the next morning. And then you hear that there are sleeper terror cells here in the United States. So you say, could be me. I don't feel in control anymore. Well, how do you get the control back? You break that cycle of worry. David gave some great examples. Exercise is another one that, as he said, I love. Exercise releases positive hormones in the brain. Sleeping more, taking something to help you sleep. Because when you get that insomnia from watching all of this, it builds on itself. You got to take medication sometimes.
Kickboxing, judo, and swimming.
Kickboxing
works.
And I'm reminded of the great sign during World War II that the British had, which was keep calm
and carry on.
Yeah.
It works.
Good advice.
Keep calm and watch HGTV every now and then.
Stay away from negativity.
We're the cure, by the way. House call is the cure today.
Absolutely.
House call is the cure of too much stress from the...
I'm too stressed.